Hey guys, it's Ian Wharton with Line Sports here, talking to you today about how draft prospect Malik Willis out of Liberty is quarterback one in this class. I know what you're thinking, it's not a great quarterback class, it's what we've heard all year, but I'm here to kind of tell you that that's not the case, that we actually have a really good quarterback prospect on our hands. He's an explosive passer, obviously a terrific runner, and he really fits with what we've been seeing over the last few years out of the position coming out of college. Look back to 2016, we started to see a premium on these athletic passers. Carson Wentz being pushed up, Paxton Lynch being pushed up the board, 2017 Mitchell Trubisky, Patrick Mahomes. Obviously Mahomes should have been drafted higher, Deshaun Watson should have been drafted higher, but Mitchell Trubisky was kind of thought as this guy who can come in and be a dual threat. 2018, Josh Allen, there's really no better example than a guy that was rough around the edges, playing with an inferior cast around him, but tremendous physical skills. And those physical skills are what made him the number 7 overall pick. Should have made him the number 1 overall pick, if not number 2. Obviously, Lamar Jackson was in that class as well. 2019, Kyler Murray coming out. We also saw 2020, a little bit of a different class, 2 premier touch passers, along with Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa. But we also saw Justin Herbert obviously go top 6 despite a decent college career, but not really one that anyone would look at and say, that is going to be a future NFL superstar outside of his physical gifts. Last year we had a couple of obviously tremendous athletes, Trevor Lawrence number 1, Trey Lance number 3, and Justin Fields going 11th. Good athlete in Zach Wilson as well going number 2. So there's been a premium, there's been a shift in these guys who can not only throw the ball with explosive velocity, but also run the ball as well and continue to stretch defenses in a new way. I'm here to kind of show you guys some examples of what he can do, what I saw throughout studying each of his games in 2021. His 2020 season was also excellent, so you can go back to that season for a good example of what he does. Statistically, he has some good numbers. 61% completion rate, 2,857 yards, 27 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. They're not going to blow you away necessarily, but I thought that the tape was much more impressive. He turns 23 in May, 6'1", 215 listed at. I think he'll probably come around 6 foot when a combine comes. I think that that's a fair size for him. We're not too concerned about that. We've seen smaller guys reach the league and be successful, especially for him. You would think with that size he'd have a weaker arm, or he'd be a little bit of a unique player in the sense that he might be more like Tua for Miami, but he's a lot more like Zach Wilson in the sense of that he is going to get outside the pocket and show an explosive arm. I think he has a much better arm than Zach Wilson did even. Much more along the lines of a Matthew Stafford or Josh Allen, despite being several inches shorter and probably about 30 pounds lighter than both of those guys. Instantly, what we see jump off of the film is that shot put type release. This is a quick motion. He can release that ball in a heartbeat. He does it from a multitude of angles. He did it throughout the season. Escaped from the pocket, can do it within rhythm. Very impressive velocity, very impressive placement. And one thing I want to highlight is that his placement is not just accurate, right? So if we're looking at accuracy, that's a catchable ball. It's a guy that his guy might have to move a little bit, might have to adjust for the ball. I saw that a lot with Zach Wilson, and why I think Zach Wilson was a little bit overrated as a prospect was he could get the ball to his receiver, but he's doing so and forcing his receiver to adjust to the ball. We don't see a lot of that from Malik Willis. Malik Willis is putting that ball on the money. He's maximizing the yards out after the catch. He's putting the ball on the money when he's outside the pocket under pressure. Really some excellent examples throughout this past season where he made plays that translate no matter the skill level that he's facing. I know competition is a big concern. If you look statistically to the end of 2021 season, he had a little bit of a rough year, but we need to look beyond the numbers, and that's kind of what I did. I charted each of his passes in an accuracy chart, and I've been doing this for the last 8 draft classes. He ranks really well, ranks well with guys like Deshaun Watson, right there with Kyler Murray. He's right in line with a lot of other former number 1 overall picks, guys that ended up being very good NFL quarterbacks very quickly in their career. And of course, he's got that excellent ability to extend plays and rush as well as just raw accuracy. Beyond the arm strength, and I don't want to overlook the arm strength, but beyond the arm strength, he has this touch. He's not just a fastball thrower. I think that's another misconception with him. He has a lot of examples of putting arc on his passes, examples of throwing a little bit of a changeup, finessing coverages and leverages a little bit. Can it improve? Absolutely. I think the one area where he can improve is he puts a lot of heat on that ball on those intermediate routes. It was the least accurate position of the field that he was throwing to, especially to his right. was just 11 of 28 as far as catchable balls from 11 to 19 yards to the right of the hash mark. 5 interceptions that side of the field. No touchdowns. I think that's a big area of improvement for him. I also think some of that was a function of the offense as well. Just kind of looking at the mistakes that he made throughout the year. Some of this is just being in a Hugh Freeze offense. It's a great offense. It's very friendly to quarterbacks. It's friendly to receivers, spreads the field wide, takes advantage of wide hashes, and it took advantage of his great arm strength and accuracy. And at times, it limited his decision making. He didn't have a lot of options. Some of these plays, he had 1 or 2 receivers. Even though there's 4 wide receivers wide, it's not the read. It's not the play. It's a predetermined snap. It's coming in from the sideline. He knows where he's going with the ball, and sometimes he tried to force it. He definitely has a Superman complex, I think, at times. And I think that that's something that, you work out of. I'd rather have that than the opposite, right? In the age of the NFL right now, you have to compete with Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, these guys that are just tremendous playmakers. They're going for the throw. Joe Burrow, all going for the throw at each play. You don't want to be caught with a guy who's checking down on 3rd down. And that certainly wasn't the play of Malik Willis. Went for past the marker on 3rd and 10 and longer, 14 of 24 attempts. So he does a good job on that. He's an aggressive player, likes to go past the marker on the majority of his plays. 3rd and 1 through 4, went past the marker 12 of 13 times. 3rd and 5 through 9, 21 of 27 times. So you're getting an aggressive passer, and I really love that about his game. One thing that I'd like to see him continue to improve upon, not only not putting quite as much heat on his intermediate passes, but also continuing to finesse the defense, right? And he does a good job of keeping his eyes upfield, but this was something that he was pressured a whopping 39% of his snaps last year. Easily the most I've charted in 8 years. So his offensive line was terrible. Some of that was from him, obviously, moving into pressure, extending plays, inviting some of that pressure. It's going to happen. We saw that with Josh Allen, too. His profile is actually shockingly similar to Allen. And I think that it can be looked at as a good thing, right? Because he has the physical tools to be similar like Allen. He can overcome some of these limitations that we saw, or at least some of these tendencies that we saw. He's going to be in a right situation where that kind of fosters the physical skills, fosters his pre-snap ability, because I think he does a great job pre-snap, eats up off coverage. If you play off coverage, he is going to hit that curl route. He's going to hit the crosser. He's going to hit the dig route with really good timing, great velocity, great placement. Very rarely made mistakes on those routes. The routes that we saw the issues on, they were going to be more of a vertical play to the sideline. It's going to be him extending outside the pocket, trying to do a little bit too much. So within the scheme, he's great. He's obviously wonderful at extending plays outside of the scheme as well. You get him outside the pocket, and he is just looking for the big play. And I love that about him. He was really good at converting those plays. I thought that his touch downfield was something he can definitely improve upon. Several examples throughout the year of just missing wide open receivers. I think that's just shortening his stance a little bit, not using quite as much arm. Sometimes he just wants to be all arm, and we see that with these big arm guys. It's not enough of a concern for me to say that it's going to be a huge issue at the next level, but it is something that you want to improve upon. And it was, again, hate to go back to him, but Josh Allen had the same issue. He would overthrow guys for the first 3 years of his NFL career, too. Was terrible at the deep ball in his first 2 seasons. Got a little bit better year 3, and now he is a prolific passer to every level. We don't want to count on Josh Allen because he was a bit of an exception. Malik Willis is essentially like 2020 Lamar Jackson. In a very similar light as a passer, he's an adequate passer at the very least with an explosive skill set to help overcome some of those mistakes that are going to come with a young quarterback. These are things that can be worked on. These are things that are going to be worked on with the right offensive coordinator that builds an offense around his skills. And as we can see throughout his season, he continued to bounce back from constant pressure, the occasional mistake. 8 of his 12 interceptions were just bad reads. And I would say 3 of those were just schemed. They were just plays that he really had little choice, and he tried to force the ball as opposed to just throwing it away. 2 of those were from bad accuracy. 1 of them was from a drop. Overall, though, these weren't cataclysmic mistakes. These were mistakes that were usually him playing up to a higher competition. We saw 3 of them against Ole Miss. It's going to happen. He didn't have the playmakers. He didn't really have the surrounding cast. But he did play fairly well that game. There's certainly moments in that game where he was the best player on the field. I never thought that he was, being outmatched or outwitted or anything like that against a great level of competition. And I think that we're going to see that very quickly in the NFL. even at the last game of the year against Eastern Michigan, not great statistically, but again, you look at the plays that he was making. Some of those plays were called back by penalties. I thought that he played a really great game as far as when you look into the details of the game, he had some phenomenal plays where he was just dominating the competition. So Malik Willis, look back at Trey Lance last year. Lance had the advantage where he was 20 years old at the time of the draft. I think Willis is what Trey Lance will be in 2 years. So why would you worry about his age? Why would you worry about having to develop him when he's already at the stage where you want him to be? And you don't have to burn that first year. You can play him immediately for a team like Pittsburgh, for a team like the Giants. I know the Giants are committing to Daniel Jones for this year, for now. But if you're one of these Washington, someone like that, New Orleans, absolutely a no-brainer. I think that he warrants as high as consideration as number 2. Detroit's not ready to win in 2022, and I do think that that's a consideration. If they're going to lose anyways, you might want to go for C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young in 2023. However, I think that you might be missing the boat on Willis if you pass on him too much. This is a top 6 pick. Not only analytically, his profile is extremely good. His physical skill set is tremendous. He's not just a power thrower. He's not a one-read quarterback. He's not someone that you can simply put into a box because of his skill set. So, welcome to draft season. Thanks for watching. I'm Ian Wharton.